Hey, super scientists. We're looking at Eco2 food webs in your Ecosystems Lab notebook on page 4. And we're going to be looking at different food chains that, when they're combined together, make up food webs in different areas and different habitats, and looking at the roles of producers, consumers, and decomposers in food webs, what kind of roles that they might play. So what is the source of energy for most living things? We've talked about this before. Either directly or indirectly, the source of energy for most living things is the sun. So the sun provides the energy for producers to go through photosynthesis, and then that energy, 10% of that energy actually is then passed to the consumers that will eat the grass or the plants, for example, and then 10% of that energy is continued to be passed up to each trophic level in a food chain. So let's look at the producers first. So producers are going to be plants and also algae and trees and things like that. So producers are going to use sunlight in order to make their own food. And the specific food that is produced is glucose, C6H12O6. So producers are going to go through the process of photosynthesis. So since producers are going through photosynthesis, then that means that they are autotroph. So we know the word autotroph if you use your stems. Auto means self, troph means feeding or nourishment. So producers are able to be self-nourishing. They make their own food. They make their own glucose as a result of photosynthesis. Consumers. So we have looked a little bit at producers and consumers and decomposers, all three, and you probably talked a little bit about each of these different categories of organisms, probably in 6th grade. So 3 different consumers. You may have talked about different types of organisms that eat specific foods. So consumers are going to be organisms that have to eat food. They cannot produce their own glucose, so they have to eat food in order to provide the fuel that is necessary for generating energy through the process of cellular respiration. So since consumers go through cellular respiration, they're considered heterotrophs. Remember, your stem hetero is different. And again, troph means food, feeding, nourishment. So the 3 types of consumers. First is herbivores. So your stem herb means plant. So herbivores are organisms that eat plants. So that can also include things that are related to plants like bark and roots, seeds. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the leafy part of it. So it can be anything that is on or attached to the plant, such as fruits and pollen. So some common herbivores: cows, sheep, rabbits, grasshoppers. So your herbivores are the level in the trophic level pyramid that's directly above the consumer. And then we have carnivores. So carnivores are organisms that can eat meat. So carn is going to be referring to meat. So this can include insects and animals that are eaten by these consumers. So carnivores include tigers, predators like birds of prey, sharks, frogs. So this, again, the specific type of food, the specific type of meat that is eaten may just be insects, or it may be just animals in general, or some combination of that. So carnivores eat meat. And omnivore. So omni means all. Omnivores are organisms that can eat plants and animals. So for example, people can eat plants and animals, and that doesn't necessarily mean that some people may not choose to eat a specific type of food. For example, vegetarians are going to focus on eating plant matter and choose not to eat meat, but their body is capable of processing meat, so they are still considered omnivores. So other examples of omnivores: bears, raccoons, again, people, lots of birds. And then we have decomposers. So decomposers, we know, break stuff down. Decomposers are going to break down organic matter. They break down waste and remains. And decomposers are referred to as nature's recyclers. So examples are bacteria and fungi. There's some other examples here, these isopods, these little roly-poly bugs, millipedes, and they're going to return nutrients to the soil. So as decomposers break down for example, a dead organism on the side of the road, as they break that down, those nutrients, those chemicals that are broken down, are returned to the soil, and they provide nutrients for the soil, for organisms living in the soil, for plants and other fungi growing in the soil. And a lot of times, nitrogen is one of those common compounds. So as nitrogen is returned to the soil, that nitrogen can then be used by plants to help as sort of a natural fertilizer. And that nitrogen helps plants to produce proteins, which we know are important for cell growth and repair of tissues. So on page 4, you have this little review about food chains. A few questions here to help you to review food chains. And this is looking at a terrestrial food chain. So we know terra refers to land, and then marine food chain. So mar refers to water or sea. So you have down here your producer. So the producer, again, is the organism that goes through photosynthesis, is the organism that is going to get the energy directly from the sun. And then we go up to your next trophic level and so on. So at the top, you're going to have your apex predator, which is the top of the trophic level pyramid, the top of the ecological pyramid. So make sure you get this completed on page 4 and answer these questions based on your content knowledge and also looking at the pictures you have here.